It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, today I am here with none other than Gary Head, Chairman and CEO of Signature Bank. And Gary, I really appreciate you taking time out to be on the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. It is so great to actually sit down and talk with you at length.
Hey, it's my privilege. I appreciate you taking time to come in and interview me. Thank you for doing so.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, one of the things that we're trying to do here at the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast is, really connect with interesting people. The whole purpose of the podcast is the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life. And you actually touch upon a lot of those areas. So, and you've seen a lot because you've been in this area for how long?
I graduated from the University of Arkansas in 1982, December.
Okay.
Started working at McElroy Bank in February of 83. So I've been consistently working in this market since February of 83.
Wow.
In the banking business.
In the banking business, yeah. So you kind of cut your teeth in this, and you basically, the role that you're in now is just a natural evolution, if you will.
Well, I think I've been very fortunate. I've had a great deal of assistance from a lot of pioneers that lived in this part of the world that were kind enough to take me under their wing and show me the ropes many years ago.
Yeah.
And, you're only as good as the team that's around you.
Right.
But we've been very fortunate to have had, so many unbelievable entrepreneurs build Northwest Arkansas.
Right.
And in my lifetime, I've gotten to touch so many of them and learn so much from each of them.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Well, I guess since you're leading the conversation in this direction, I got to ask, did you work with or have a chance to encounter Sam Walton at all?
Sam Walton was my boss. I worked for his son for a number of 17 years at what was McElroy, and then Arvest Bank. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
And Mr. Sam was alive in my early career, and obviously his fingerprints are all over Arvest Bank.
Yeah. And it's so funny, and I always take a moment whenever I can just to acknowledge his genius and just who he was as an individual. A lot of times you see people from the outside and you think, oh, I can figure them out. This is just a dude that started a really big company. But he was much more than that. And I took my wife and my kids last year to visit the Sam Walton Museum, and just understanding how he started Walmart, everything that he went through to do it, and how important it was for him to involve a wide variety of people in the process. It wasn't like it was just him; it was so many other people. And did you experience that sense of camaraderie?
I think the things that I learned from Sam Walton and Jim Walton, his son, who's just as intelligent, and I learned a ton. So Sam Walton used the terminology best practices before that was a term.
Right.
And so he would go and find places and people that were doing things exceptionally well, and rather than inventing those, he would come back and put them in his own context and use them.
Yeah.
Best people, best ways of doing business, and the man was a genius in many ways that most people will never really understand. They only look at the numbers and what he amassed in wealth, and the truth of the matter is that he never, in my opinion, cared so much about the money.
Right.
He cared about doing something that he loved. He was passionate.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I mean, it's one of the things that I mentioned to one of our common friends is that there are so many people here in Northwest Arkansas that have done well for themselves, but they don't wear it on their sleeves.
That's right.
I've come from some big cities, and the way that you measure a person is what they show. And here, people in Northwest Arkansas don't necessarily show it, but they have it.
Well, you get on a bike path and ride around Northwest Arkansas, and then you want to talk bad about Walmart or the Waltons, you should go get a mirror and look in there really carefully, because they're putting their money back into the the very place that they were able to be successful.
Yeah.
And the Tyson family the same, and the Hunt family the same. And we've been really very fortunate to have the kind of people that loved where they lived and loved the people that are in our area.
Yeah.
And they've always been very open to people. You came here from another part of the world.
Right.
And, I was very fortunate. I'll just tell this story. I was very fortunate that Sam Walton brought the very first people for Procter & Gamble to my office when I was at McElroy, and he was the owner.
Right.
And he said, I've invited these people here, and I expect you to take care of them. Lucky for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to meet all those original folks that came here, the first team, the Walmart team, for Procter & Gamble. Well, how many teams are here today? I think there's 1,800 companies represented with an office here today. That was the very first one. So how very fortunate for me to have known all those. A lot of them are still at Procter & Gamble, frankly. But the Procter & Gamble office a mile down the road doesn't have a sign in front of it. It's very, there's nobody that knows where they are unless they tell you. So,
right.
That whole part of Northwest Arkansas is that you got something, but you look like everybody else.
Exactly.
That's what makes this place such a great place to live.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, that's a good story, and a lot of people don't realize. And I'm always proud to tell it. I've been here almost 5 years, and I'm calling Northwest Arkansas my home now. But I always tell that story about Sam Walton put his fingerprint on this area in a major way that still ripples down till today. And when, like you said, you mentioned 1,800. I mean, anybody that has an item in Walmart has to have representation here in Northwest Arkansas, which a lot of people are like, oh, I never knew that. And I'm like, yes, that's how strategic Sam Walton thought about this whole process. And it has brought industry to this area that would have never been here if it weren't for Sam Walton.
Well, I think the word that ministers use and that Sam Walton uses to be a good steward.
Yeah.
And I think you could say, if you summed up the Walton family, they've been good stewards of what they've been handed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and Don Tyson is a good steward of what he was handed and was able to make. And the Hunt family, thank goodness Mrs. Hunt maintains that, are very good stewards of the benefits that they made from being citizens of this part of the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you've actually been a good steward. I mean, you're working on. You're still a young guy, so I mean, you've been a good steward. I mean, tell me about. I want to talk about you. 2004. I know that was a very important year for you.
It was. I had. At 2004, I'm 44 years of age, and I had been in the banking business for a long time. I was president of the very bank that I started out of college working at. I got that job at 39, which was an unbelievable accomplishment for my feelings. And so the Walton family had been very good to me. They afforded me the opportunity to run, the oldest bank west of the Mississippi, the McElroy family, 4 generations deep. And so in 2004, I have an entrepreneurial spirit that I couldn't quench. And so I decided, after my wife let me about midnight, agree to leave that and start this bank, Signature Bank.
Right.
And so it felt like jumping out of an airplane and hoping my parachute opened.
That's it. So, I like that. I mean, yeah, and I think, and you bring up a good point, is that a lot of times when we, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, there is a lot of faith that goes into what's going to happen. You just never know what the outcome's going to be.
You don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. So I guess fast forward now, it's 2019, 15 years later. Could you imagine what you've been able to do and experience over the past 15 years?
No, and in no way could you have imagined in 2004. We had a great economy in 2004. Northwest Arkansas had never seen a real downturn in my lifetime, my entire banking career. We leave in 2004, start the bank in 2005. In 2008, 9, and 10, we go through the worst recession since the Great Depression.
Right.
And everybody was in trouble.
Yeah.
I had clients that I had loaned money to for 30 years that were failing left and right. And there's just, when you rely in my business on history and on character, and those two things are not helpful.
Right.
You prayed a lot,
Yeah.
and you tried everything possible to keep all of them alive. You tried to throw life preservers in every direction because you know their character was good and they were good people.
Right.
And they weren't intentionally trying to take your money.
Yeah.
And so we spent a lot of time trying to sling life preservers in every case without maybe enough regard for our own life preserver.
Right.
Yet
Right.
today, here we sit, stronger than ever.
Yeah.
And most of those people that grabbed one of those life preservers are still alive and doing better than they were before that crisis.
Right.
So, it's a success story that had a really bad chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess you could write the book when bad things happen to good people.
Amen.
Because it does happen.
It does.
And you have to be able to weather that storm. And I mean, that speaks volumes. Take me back, though. I do want to go back to just the original setup of this bank. I mean, it is a community bank, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And tell the audience what's the difference between a community bank and just a normal savings and loan, and then
Right. I think my definition of a community bank, and everyone maybe can have their own, but this community bank began in this community with local shareholders. We went to Dixon Street, where everybody should go to raise money, right?
Right.
And we had hoped we'd raise $5 or $10 million.
Yeah.
And you find out who your friends are when, frankly, you go and say, "I need some money."
Yeah.
Well, we raised $45 million at the UART Bowl on Dixon Street in August of that year of 2004.
Wow.
Which spoke volumes of all of the people that were with me and how much they trusted everyone on our team to do a really good job. And
Yeah.
it was so humbling to have that many people say, "Hey, I'm going to follow you, and here's a whole bunch of money
Yeah.
that I've saved and worked." And so that date and time will never change in my mind. Is the most humbling day of my entire life of having those people say, "Hey, we're going to vote for you, and here's our check."
Okay.
So what an unbelievable start.
Yeah, and that $45 million actually turned into $60 million, I think?
$60 million, and then
Right.
another 15. So with $75 million
Wow.
we raised in 2 short years.
That's amazing. So yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. That speaks volumes to what you represented to the community, and then I guess you've just decided, let me figure out a way to give back
Right.
because of this. So
And always part of a community bank's job is to ensure that your community does as well as possible.
Right,
And
right.
and so the difference between us and, for instance, large franchises like Bank of America or Citibank, which there's not one locally,
Right.
or any number of those, they're not from here. They don't have local representation. They don't make decisions here, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Where our board of directors are all people from here. All of our employees live in this community. Our direction comes from this community. We'll only ever be as good as this community is,
Yeah.
or we'll be as bad as it was in 2008, 9, and 10
Right.
when this community was suffering as the rest of the country was, frankly.
yeah, and that's funny because I know, and I was telling you before we started this podcast that I learned early on at a very young age that your relationship with your banker was sacrosanct, and that you needed to know who your banker was. And I think I have banked with larger banks, and truth be told, but I've also always found more comfort in dealing with the smaller banks that had stronger ties and roots with the community that was a part of. And like I told you, my grandfather modeled that. He had a relationship with the bank man and the branch manager of the bank he used to bank at in New Jersey. And even after he died, many years later, that branch manager reached out to the family and had said to us, how much my grandfather meant to him, because it was always his goal to have relationships with everybody in the community. But my grandfather was very intentional about developing that relationship, even as a depositor in the bank. And I'm sure you have experiences like that.
Well, I think your grandfather obviously was a pretty smart man. I think that my definition of a banker is, and that's what's on the back, and I'll show you this, the back of every one of our cards.
Right.
For every employee that works here.
Yeah.
They're all bankers, and they may have a specific job in this bank. But when the consumer has a need in a bank, you want to talk to a banker,
Right.
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 And so my test is that if you have a banker my question would be, do you have their cell phone number, and are you afraid to use it?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And on that card of mine, you'll see my cell phone number is on there.
It's on there,
and I
yeah.
wouldn't put it on there and hand it out if I didn't intend for you to use it.
Yeah.
So if, to me, I think there's doctors and lawyers and accountants and bankers. And I want to know my cell phone number for all of those above.
Yeah.
Agree?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
because I don't know when I'm going to need that, but when I do, I intend to use it.
Yeah.
And I may be on a Saturday looking at some piece of property on Beaver Lake that I intend to buy.
Right.
And you're trying to make that decision, and maybe it doesn't wait till Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you call your banker and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. What are you thinking?
Right.
So that you can sort of feel like, hey, gosh, I might make an offer on this deal, but I don't really want to do it if my banker's going, hey, now look, you're sort of stretched out. You just bought that new office building last week, and maybe you should think about it. Let's be careful.
Yeah.
Or if you have someone saying, hey, gosh, you know what? You're really in good shape. If that's something that's important, then I think I'm going to be comfortable with it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the same with an attorney. That's the same with an accountant, and certainly with a doctor.
Yeah.
You want to know.
Absolutely. And again, I just for full disclosure to those listening to the podcast, I actually bank at Signature Bank. And the reason why I do is because I was referred to you by a mutual friend. And that mutual friend, the first thing I said to him before I relocated, I said, I need to find a good bank. Do you know a good bank? And I mean, unequivocally, yes, Gary Head at Signature Bank, he'll take care of you. That's all he said. And then I came here, I opened up several accounts. I opened up a business account. I got a mortgage through you guys. I was able to do everything. And he really, he was on point with how he described what my experience would be. And so, again, that's just my own little short commercial for Signature Bank. But you said something that I just wanted to kind of bring back just to have a better understanding and just so the audience could appreciate it. What have you done to develop such outstanding individuals within your organization? Because it seems like everybody has the same mentality that you have to serve the community. And again, and just because I've dealt with your people in your mortgage department, I've dealt with people that deal with vendor relations here. I have a friend that works here that deals with vendor relations, and just the way that he approaches things, I'm always impressed. And then just the managers of the branch itself.
Well, when you take inventory of all of the people that we have here, some of us have worked together for over 30 years.
Okay.
And so we had like-kind mindset all along. And
Right.
so when I left Arvest, I had a number of those people that followed me blindly immediately that had no reason to know I was leaving because no one knew I was leaving. My wife didn't let me leave until midnight the night before I quit. And so we do a really good job, I believe, of making sure everyone understands the mission. And the mission is to be a great community banker, you have to give back. If you don't give back, then maybe you should work somewhere else where that's not important.
Right.
But if you're going to be here and be happy and be in a position to be given other opportunities as time goes on, then you need to reflect what our business is all about.
Yeah.
And so, many of our folks that work here, and they could all work anywhere in this business they choose to, and I'm very fortunate they choose to work here.
Right.
But we believe what we preach, and that matters.
Yeah.
Being a good liar is not something I ever wanted to be. So I have to do what I believe, and when you do that, it's amazing how much more fun it is.
Oh,
right?
I can imagine. So, what's next for Gary Head? You're young. You're still young. You still have a spring in your step. The bank is moving along really well. What are you hoping to do here at Signature in the next few years?
Well, we have, as we discussed to begin this, we have one of the best places to live in the United States.
Right.
And so we want to be the best community bank in this area for the long run.
Yeah.
I've got kids in this business.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a lot of young people that work for me that intend to continue to, they like the community bank model.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite of that would be selling to some big franchise and taking everyone's money and giving them some more and moving on down the road. I would like to work here until I can't work anymore.
Right.
And I hope that, and I know I have a lot of young people working here that have the same vision and shared expectations of doing the same. So we would like to continue to grow and be a really significant part of Northwest Arkansas financials for a very long time.
Okay, well that's good. Yeah, I had an uncle that started the first black-owned savings and loan back in Pittsburgh, and he stayed on until he was in his mid-80s. So
Phenomenal.
There's certainly hope for you.
Phenomenal.
So
well, there you go.
There's some hope
hey,
for you.
Good Lord willing.
Absolutely.
And the creeks don't rise.
Exactly.
I'll be there.
Exactly. So tell me a little bit about, some of the things that you enjoy doing here in Northwest Arkansas. Someone told me that you're an avid hunter.
Yes. Yes,
And,
I like to hunt. I like to fish. I like to play golf. And I like to ride bikes. And, my wife and I ride on the trails here a lot, and we're blessed to have that. And we have all the lakes and rivers and streams, and we have a bank in Brinkley, Arkansas, which is southeast Arkansas.
Right.
And duck hunting is, Arkansas's most noteworthy hunting. And so we have a club there, and get to take advantage of that for the 60 days duck season is open. We try to get there as often as possible.
Right.
I think my teammates in Brinkley are glad when the duck season's over because I'm not there quite so much. So we're very fortunate that our state has such unbelievable resources. And, I live on White River. Our bank's named White River Bank Shares by no mistake.
Right.
And White River runs all the way to Brinkley, where our other bank is down in southeast Arkansas. And so I sort of think our state is tied much more closely together than a lot of states because it's a small state. Everyone knows everyone.
Yeah.
And every part of our state is important. But Northwest Arkansas has a benefit of, some unbelievable pioneers that you and I are the beneficiaries today of.
Exactly.
And I'm so incredibly blessed that I knew or banked all of those folks, and I teach a class for our mutual friend at the university occasionally, and I'm in classrooms that are named after my old friends.
Right.
And when I graduated there weren't any of those buildings.
Yeah.
And there was no Sam Walton College of Business. It was just college business. And so all of this money has been made since I graduated from college.
Okay.
I mean, that's phenomenal thought processes that, all of these people have really seen enormous success in my adult lifetime.
Right.
And that's not the way it is in normal places.
Yeah.
You mentioned Boston. That there was a Tea Party there a couple of centuries ago, right?
Right.
So
right.
I mean, here we sit and we get to see this thing continue to grow and do wonderful things, and we get to put our fingerprints on little pieces of it.
Yeah.
And that's fun.
It is. It definitely is. And you mentioned going to the Sam Walton School of Business and teaching at the entrepreneurship class. Mm-hmm. What advice are you giving these young entrepreneurs, especially? I mean, what is your advice? The advice that you give around just banking relationships, or is it just general, like what you've experienced?
I try to give them the same life conversations that I got when I was fortunate enough to be a young man working at McElroy Bank for Hayden McElroy. So, the things that your grandfather taught you about first one to work, last one to leave, say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am and no ma'am, open doors for people even if they tell you they don't really want you to. Good manners get you farther in life maybe than all of that education in the world. Yeah. And so what your grandmother taught you might be way more important than what you learned in econ class. Yeah. And that stays with you longer than that econ lesson. Most jobs in life will teach you what you need to know about the job. And as hard as the university tries to teach you and prepare you, there's no possibility they can 100% prepare you for whatever job you're going to take.
Right.
But your grandmother or your grandfather teaching you good manners will certainly play farther and more importantly in your life. And work ethic is difficult, and sense of urgency are things people don't. I give all those kids a hard time. I says, when your parents text you, when do you text them back?
Right.
The question is always asked, and answered is they don't pay attention.
Right.
And so what people in the world don't understand sometimes is if you text me and I don't respond, what does that mean? I think of you in your mind.
In my mind, I think it's maybe I'm not as valuable as I thought.
You're not very important.
Eyes,
That's
right.
what I say.
Exactly.
So if I respond quickly, then I paid attention. Now, we may not agree at the end of the conversation, but at least I've exhibited good manners, right? Mm-hmm. And so to my mentor in life, another great mentor is Jim Lindsay. His picture's right there. So Jim Lindsay's real estate fingers are all over this part of the world, and I've been very fortunate to have been his banker a long, long time.
Okay.
Jim Lindsay, I used to go by his office, and he would be in there late in the evening, and I would walk, and he would always wave me in, and he would have a big stack of phone messages in the old days on top
Right.
pink on top of a nail
Right,
on a little deal.
exactly, yeah.
And he would be one by one pulling them
Going
off and
through.
calling people back.
Yeah.
And I said, "What are you doing? You're an important man." He goes, "No, I don't leave this office every evening until every one of those phone calls are returned."
Yeah.
Well, now, if Jim Lindsay called everybody back, who's Gary Head?
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I sure
Right.
better do
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And so my lessons in life have always been, if you are the nicest person they deal with and you pay respect and you do your part of the deal, then you can go to bed at night, sleep well, and you know you're doing the best you can. And that's all I can ask of anybody is, if you tell me you're doing the best you can, how can I ask more?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that goes
absolutely.
for borrowers, that goes for friends, that goes for employees.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I that's great. And it's so funny that, I had a chance to do a little sleuthing around and to talk to people that know you. And it, honestly, to a person, man and woman that I both spoke with, they all said the same thing about your responsiveness. That, when he says that he gives you his cell phone number, he really means it. And he means that you can call him anytime. And that came from one employee that works here, and then from a friend. And that was it. They just said your level of responsiveness and the fact that you really care makes all the difference in the world. So,
Well, you can't lie about caring.
no, absolutely, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. So tell me, what are I know that you like hunting and you spend a fair amount of time doing that. What else would you say? Because again, this is a show about Northwest Arkansas.
Right.
Where is your favorite restaurant to go to here?
Well, I have a number of them, right? And I have something to do with some of them, and that even makes it more fun. I really like date night for my wife and I. We've been married 38 years.
Wow.
Date night is Bordinos.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that is her favorite. And Joe
Okay.
Fennell's been my friend for a very long time. And,
Okay.
And I appreciate so much his friendship. And I like to go to Jose's in Tawnytown.
Yep.
Now it's Tawnytown.
Right.
Doug Allen was my little brother's roommate from Eureka Springs. That's where I grew up.
Okay.
And so I've known Doug all his life.
Okay.
I enjoy that for Mexican food. I love to go to Hermans for steaks.
Okay.
Nick knows how to cook steak the way I like to eat it.
Yep.
And he buys exceptional meat. I'm a pretty good cook. I go to Richard's Meat Market and buy
yeah,
steaks and
absolutely.
cook myself. And, I think mine are pretty good. And I wouldn't argue Nick's are better, but I think mine are pretty good. And then, I've got, fortunately, there's Pinnacle Country Club has I'm a member there, fortunately, and they have a brunch that's phenomenal.
Okay.
To go to, and I do that a lot. And Eclectic Kitchen is a new place I've just discovered.
I've heard
It's
about that. I've not
phenomenal
been there, but I
food.
heard the food's
Brian
good.
was a chef at Blessings for a while back in the day, and he
Okay.
has got a really nice deal. Leverett Lounge is a new place I discovered. I hadn't been there before. That's a nice place. And so my wife and I like to try, our kids are grown and they live here, and so we try lots of places.
Yeah.
And then you go to Mama Z's in Tawnytown. I mean, you can't mess that up that's maybe the best spaghetti in the whole wide world.
Right.
And, we're blessed to have a whole lot of restaurants that Joe Fennell started Bordinos. It's not a chain.
Yeah.
Doe's is out of Little Rock, and Doe's is a great place to eat. And, so there's a million places that you can go. I always travel and I go to places and people go, well, let's go to this chain or that chain. And I go, well, don't you have any restaurants that are like from people that started them here?
Right.
And it's so rare, it seems, when you travel.
Exactly.
I love, Theo's is a phenomenal place, and Scott's a great guy, and he's
Yeah.
got several restaurants. Eastside Grill is on my way home, so
Yeah.
I go by there a lot. So, I try all of them, but I do most of my dining with people that do business here.
Here, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now that makes sense. Well, I that is certainly a nice list of places to visit, and we will be sure to include those in the show notes so everybody can take advantage of some of the places that Gary Head visits, and you might even see him there one day.
You very well may.
Yeah. So as we close out, the last thing, what would be one little secret about Northwest Arkansas that most people don't realize that you think is really cool?
I think the part that people discover on their own after they've been here a very short period of time is that people are really as nice as they seem.
Yeah.
They wave at you. They say hello in the grocery store.
Yeah.
It is Mayberry RFD on steroids.
Right.
That's the best secret.
Yeah,
You know?
no, I love that. Yeah, you're right. And people don't beep at you either. So,
No.
which is, that my Boston tendencies have to keep me in check just because I have become so much more relaxed since moving here 5 years ago.
I'll bet.
And it's definitely been a blessing.
Hey, this place
so.
is good for your blood pressure.
It is. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. So, well, Gary, this has been a pleasure. I'm so glad that you were in this inaugural group of people that we had on the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. I mean, your story, there's so much there to be told, and I certainly want to encourage folks to check out Signature Bank. Come by and visit with Gary and his team. I mean, they are, and again, this is not a commercial for Signature Bank by any means, but they are the real deal. And I've been around the country. I've interacted with a number of different banks and credit unions, and these guys really walk the walk and talk the talk. So if you are relocating to the Northwest Arkansas area, definitely consider them, and we'll put all their contact information in the show notes. But if not, even if you just have questions about financial related matters, this is probably a good place and a safe place to come where, no one's going to force you to do business with them, but they will give you some honest information.
Absolutely.
And I think that's perfect. So,
Hey,
Gary,
it's my honor. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And folks, we'll be back next week with another great episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Thank you so much and have an amazing day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.